Steve Seppi, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me this
Hey,
morning.
thank you for coming. And I have to compliment you on your hoodie there. It's quite nice.
Thank you. Yeah, a new friend gave it to me, and I thought we could match for
Yeah,
this. So
God
this is
bless it, man.
yeah.
Yeah. Listen to me. You are the CEO of Dairy West, which until recently was a two-state association to promote good policy, marketing, the whole bit for the dairy industry. You just doubled in size, my friend. You are now a four-state association. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we added two new states to Dairy West. They're joining us in partnership. So as of November 4th, we had a board meeting, and this has been a long time in the works. So, farmers across our region, they've been talking about this, better part of a decade, right? I started working for producers in Washington almost 10 years ago before I came over to Dairy West. And this has been going on since then, and I think the vision has always been that they want to have a larger share of voice. At the end of the day, consolidation is a fact of the industry. That's happened across the country, and it's happened faster on the coasts and faster in, states where economic factors have forced producers to really have to think hard about how they're going to be profitable in their
Right.
business. And what that means is there's less and less producers and less of their voices that are heard. And what that means to consumers is they're further removed from where their food's coming from, right? The time where we had thousands of dairy farms in each state, and and in some of your big ag areas, those are decades ago at this point, and you no longer have everybody saying, "Oh yeah, my dad was a farmer, or my grandpa was a dairy farmer. Oh, they had cows." People don't know where their food comes from anymore, and that's because there's not a lot of farmers. So as we had those conversations, the strategy was the same, but it took having the right people in the right place at the right time. And you need all the partners to feel good about it. And the goal is obviously we get a bigger voice, we can be more efficient, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to have a conversation with any of the producers that we represent, because they invest in this and in the work that we do. They set that money aside to drive consumption, drive awareness, and ultimately build a consumer base that wants their products and wants them to be part of the community. And this gives us an opportunity to be able to kind of magnify their voice. They all have a common mission, but I need to be able to sit down, whether it's a producer in Idaho, whether it's a producer in Utah or Oregon, wherever else, and have a direct conversation with them about, this is why you should care, this is why you're investing, and this is what value it means to you. And if I can't do that, I'm not doing my job. So, it's certainly exciting to have that broader region, and it's been a vision of the farmers that have been on the board. And we've got new board members, and some of them aren't here that were here at that point, but I certainly don't take for granted the fact that each individual farmer, they may not be connected like the folks on the board, and I need to be able to have a conversation with them and understand what's keeping them up at night, what's making it hard to pay their bills, and what can I do and what can my team do to make their lives a little easier and a little better. Because they work hard for that money. and,
Yeah, man.
and I take it very seriously, and our team does too. So, I don't mean to start on a serious note, but it is. I mean, it's a tough time in ag. I mean, there's things to be excited about, but I see how hard farmers work, and that's kind of where our culture starts from, right? I think, it's, if they're working the hours they're working, we need to be doing the same. We need to understand their business in order to understand the gravity of the decisions we're making, right? Because there's some farms where they're barely breaking even, and this money better be working hard for them, right?
Right.
So I think it's exciting. The connectivity between all the states in our region, it's apparent, right? Everybody you talk to, I used to dairy here, and I moved over here, 20 years ago, or my grandpa dairied in Eastern Oregon, and then I moved across the border, and now I dairy in Idaho, and I still have cropland over there, and the processors. I mean, milk crosses state lines all the time. There's big consumer bases, and each of them are a little unique. You're adding. Seattle and Oregon, they're progressive cities, but they're big dairy consumers. They certainly are maybe a little bit more maybe a little bit more anxious about whatever issue it might be, environmental issues, social issues. But they consume the products and they want to know about the farmers. And you've got that urban-rural divide, and it exists across our country. But you get in some of those states that have had heavy urbanization. That's kind of what I'm getting at, and you end up with ignorance. And honestly, it's a bit on both sides, right? And people have to eat, and farmers want to nourish the world. And it's that middle area where you end up with some of those disconnects where it breeds frustration on the farmer's side or on the consumer side where they just don't understand, and that's where we come in.
May I I moved from Northern California, in the Bay Area, and there's an area called the Marin Headlands, which is just north of San Francisco. Go over the Golden Gate Bridge, beautiful coastal area, and as you can imagine, like it's cooler in the summer, it's warmer in the winter, then more extreme climates. Great place for cattle. There are all these dairies that have existed there for decades and decades. Okay, and with urbanization and misunderstandings about what the dairy industry is and the value outside of even nutrition that this open grazing brings, there was a big push to eliminate those leases. So all of these dairies in the Marin area got their leases terminated. And hearing this, my father-in-law lives close to the area, so he brought this up. I'm like, so is somebody going out there with a lawnmower now? Like you have half of California burning, and then you have these areas that are right next to these unprecedentedly expensive urban areas that we're now just growing fuel 365 with no formal management plan. Like not the least of which is the destruction of this industry that has been there forever. So it was like, what are you doing? But again, coming back to your point, there's no way in the world I would know about that outside of my education from talking to people like you and then understanding the ag system in Idaho. And, it boggles the mind, the disconnect and poor messaging that is promoted, not just within land management, but also like, oh, get the cows out of here. Like they're putting a hole in the ozone or like greenhouse gases or whatever. It's like, oh my God, man, like just please stop.
Yeah. It's just lack of awareness, right? Misunderstanding for what production ag is and how important it is. Both, start with just nourishing people, right?
Right. Let's start with the fundamentals.
That's
you need
pretty
calories.
Fundamental, right? Yeah, and then on top of that, just the amount of impact it has on, communities, livelihoods, everything else, right? And then even, the more minute details like you're talking about, you remove ag land from the equation and suddenly you've created this whole other problem, and people, they're making decisions and they're not ill-intended, they're just misinformed, right? So
right. And it's unfortunate. There's also a problem in the mining industry. We use all the tech in here has rare earth minerals. We have critical minerals. Like we have a lot of real significant technology and metallurgy going on just in this room. We all consume it, but there's a frustration and a large industry around like, oh, we should never mine in the United States ever again. It's like, okay, but you're not stopping your consumption. Like you understand, like, and I appreciate where you're coming from. Let's not destroy the earth. All you're doing is outsourcing it to a place that has fewer regulations. They have like warlords holding 6-year-olds at gunpoint to like get the cobalt out of the river. You have these real problems. The only solution to your actual problem is you stop your consumption of these things. And I would respect you if you want to go live in a hut somewhere. That's fine. Don't use any nails, by the way. But the point is like, yeah, you could go do that.
Yeah.
But the same thing occurs within dairy, where it's not just ignorance of land management, but it's like, okay, you can stop the dairy industry or the grazing industry from your area. You can remove it. You're like, hey man, we're better than this, like no cow farts, whatever. But you don't get any more proteins. No more cheese. You're going to eat cashew cheese and that doesn't ooh and goo. Like you're not getting any of the benefits of this industry. Like that would be the only, and if somebody said, yeah, dude, that's what I want. I want to live in a world that has no, bovine ancestry. What, I don't know, however you want to say it, right? It's like, that's fine. And you want to eat this, cashew, lame cheese or whatever it might be. Fine. It's totally fine. But by the way, that world is going to have some serious long-term ecological problems, right? Like, what do you think the bison did, right?
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
you had these mass million-sized herds, all of these, all of the fowl following them, scratching through, fertilizing the earth, managing that's. Anyway,
No,
I black out when people
you're
say these
exactly
things.
right. I mean, first off, we're not going to call whatever that cashew product is cheese. I don't know what it is, but it's not
A
cheese.
cheese-like substitute.
Yeah, there we go. Sure, sure.
Could you imagine? I've had that cheese before because I have some people that go through some like real
not good.
alternative diet fads
good.
in my family, which is it's really frustrating because there was a period of time. I remember when I was 14, my mom goes through like this zone diet. She's like, okay, you can only eat food that falls into like, I don't know, digestive enzyme categories or something. And I was like, well, what do I eat? She's like, you can have a lot of eggs and cheese. And I was like, hell, I remember this morning to this day.
Yeah.
I made like a 6-egg omelet and I shredded cheddar all over that. I was like, yes, and just like the goo. And then a couple years later, it was the cheese-like substitute. And let me tell you, that stuff is not fit for swine. It was terrible.
It's certainly not a replacement. I don't know what it is, but it is not a replacement. No, and I mean, you're talking about like the taste and enjoyment. Nothing beats dairy when it comes to that, right? It brings indulgence. But even beyond that, I mean, we kind of getting back to that fundamental.
Yes.
I mean, people need to be nourished. They need nutrients. They need protein. I mean, milk is meant to nourish at the end of the day. And I don't know. I mean, some of this, again, I think some of it just comes back to lack of understanding and lack of awareness. I mean, it's out of sight, out of mind. The food shows up in the grocery store and that works. And I think some of the, I don't mean this to sound bad, but a lot of those ideas of, a world without animal-based proteins and livestock agriculture, it's built on affluence, right? I mean, we have to feed 7.5 billion people, and people need nutrients, right? You've got parts of the world where people, I mean, even in the U.S., but broader than that, there's people all over the world that need good nutrition, and that's what dairy brings.
Sure.
And it's able to do it at scale, and I think people just don't understand that, right? I can make this decision, and I can go grow a garden on my roof, and, I'm going to get the nutrients I need. And it's like, good luck replicating that. It's just it's not feasible.
Right. And it's not feasible at scale,
Not
right?
at all.
And it's also not devoid of animal suffering. Like, go plow a field and see, like I moved to this place recently. Really, I was living in like an HOA when I got here, and then I finally got to like a little mini farm, like 1.5 acres. I'm like, yeah, I'm Farmer John, and I'm rototilling this huge 10,000 square foot area by hand, by the way, like, because I don't have like a big, anyway, for like weeks. It was terrible. And this earth had not been, it was like concrete, like it hadn't been touched in forever. I finally got smart actually, and I tied the rototiller to the back of the John Deere driving lawnmower and then just dragged it. So I didn't actually have to hold it anymore. Anyway, the point is I'm rototilling, and I rototill over a gopher, and like now the gopher's running away. And by the way, I've been fighting this gopher for like weeks. I've like have these traps out, and I suck at setting traps. So I'm chasing this thing around. I'm out there at 6 a.m. with a BB gun trying to get it. Like is literally like just a National Lampoon's thing. And I finally see the gopher, and it's like, oh, you got to deal with it now. And especially now that it's above ground, like you got to, anyway, so I dealt with it. But the point is, you're rototilling over animals all the time. And that was just the gopher that popped out. I'm sure I hit other gophers or like it killed the gopher dead, like voles. Like, you have real animal, consumption in just straight plant growth that you have to recognize. So if you're coming at it from a morality standpoint or like hey, we have to stop killing animals standpoint, it's like, you don't get a freebie with soybeans, man. Like there are some costs associated with this as well. So like, you're going to have to pick your poison at one point. Just don't be a moral hypocrite.
Well, and I would just start with, I mean, if your focus is on humans and fairness, I mean, again, coming back to basic human necessity. I mean, having people not have proper nutrition and, being malnourished and starving to death in parts of the world and parts of our country. I certainly don't see how that's a solution. And I mean, this is an industry that's built on, farmers taking care of their animals, right? At the end of the day, it's in their best interest, right? I think if they've got healthy animals, they're more productive, and that just makes business sense. And I mean, you don't get into dairy farming because you don't like cows, right? Like, that's not the point. Right. There's other ways to make money that are a lot easier than doing what farmers do on a daily basis. And the mission is they want to feed people at the end of the day. Like, the values are not different. It's a noble cause. And I think people don't, again, because they don't meet a farmer, whenever we have a chance to do that and get people out, they always leave with a better attitude. But you got a couple hundred farmers across our entire region. We got 750 ish dairies across those 4 states. You've got 8 million consumers in Washington. You got 5 million in Oregon, 3 million in Utah, and 2 million in Idaho. Good luck, right?
Right.
So, but it's worthwhile though. I think anytime we have an opportunity and you've got those producers that take time out of the day to show the passion they have to do the work that they do, it's impactful. And that's a big part of what we want to do, is help them tell their story and reach more people.
Yeah.
But it's a never ending job to try to get that message communicated, just because there's a lot of consumers out there, and
there's a lot of information and communication too.
Well, a lot of misinformation.
Exactly.
Too. Yeah.
You have, man, I saw this hilarious thing. This guy, well, I won't even go into it, but it's just like, you get occasionally people that have this dark sense of humor with showing hypocrisy throughout, like social media and dietary trends. And at some point it's like, coffee's good for you, or coffee's going to make you go blind. Coffee's like all these different things. And it's like, dude, I just drink coffee. Like, I'm just moving on with my life.
I know. It's, every other year it's like, this thing is the best for you, or this thing's going to kill you.
And you're going to see, I mean, this is how like flat earthers came around. It's like, you just see these like little convincing videos. So, I mean, if you
how
can
many
convince
generations have we been doing this for? And I feel okay. I mean, I'm drinking a coffee right now. I feel great about it. And, a little cream in there, nothing wrong with that.
God bless it. It's the best. I wanted to come back to Dairy West. So Washington and Oregon are the 2 states that you just recently added, correct?
Yep.
They had individual state associations, or were they a group? Had they grouped together?
Individual. So they,
So you have the Washington Dairy and then the Oregon Dairy, essentially.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So they have state commissions in each of those states. Similar. 15 cents per hundredweight. Goes into the checkoff program, and that's both the local program and then the national program, DMI. But no, they were independent. I think in the West, we've always kind of been fiercely independent. I think that's kind of in all of our nature out here. And but the connectivity that I was mentioning, that's been around for a long time. But certainly, I think both sides, you're taking a little bit of a leap of faith in any partnership, right? And understanding how is this going to benefit all of us. You lose that. There's a fear that you might lose that identity or your independence. So how do we make sure that the sum is greater than the parts is really what we're working on.
Okay. Riddle me this. You're dealing with 3 associations that become one. Mm-hmm. Why was Dairy West the one picked? Why didn't you get consolidated into Washington or Oregon? What are you guys doing that made them be like, hey, man, let us in?
I mean, Dairy West was built to be that model, right? So you already had Idaho and Utah together, and you've got a representation from each of the states that come together to provide direction directly from those producers on behalf of their producers from their districts and their regions and their states. It's already built as a model to do that, and it's built as a structure to be equitable across all those boards. So the structure was in place, and then obviously at the end of the day, Idaho's the biggest producer. I mean, dairy is a massive, massive part of the economy in Idaho. I mean, it's 3rd in the U.S., right? It is a big dairy producing state. So, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of consumers in Idaho. A lot of the products that are produced here, they're not being consumed here. They're being consumed across the region, of course, but across the globe. So it's about magnifying the reach generally. And I think, why did they join Dairy West instead of the other way around? I think partially the structure that was in place, of course, partially just the dynamic of, you've got an organization that is, representing producers from across the region, but is really centered in Idaho. And, at the end of the day, I think it's about the people that you have in place. And, I had a long time working for the producers in Washington. And I think that's what shifted now is they were able to see that, someone that they'd worked with and they'd trusted and gotten to know over the years is going to be helping move this organization into its next phase and into the future. So it helped them be able to understand that they're going to be well represented in this process. Right. And not, I mean, Idaho's big, right? I think on one hand, you've got new states that are joining and they're thinking, we're going to be swallowed up. We're not going to show up because we're not the big player here anymore. on the other end of, on the other end of things, I think you've always got that idea from, Idaho or folks, the Utah producers that are already part of Dairy West, where is our message going to get watered down? And I get that, and I think the board has been very thoughtful about it. But at the end of the day, there's not enough producer voices in the world, as I was saying before, and the mission's the same, right? We're trying to move dairy products. We're trying to educate the public on why dairy needs to be part of their diet and why they should feel good about consuming it. And that's going to benefit all of our farmers across the region. And as I said before, milk, it crosses state lines. It's not like, the artificial border that we drew there is going to suddenly prevent a product from being sold in one state versus the other, or it being processed in one state versus the other. So there's a lot of good natural synergies from a partnership perspective, but it is, and that's kind of the nature of being a farmer. I mean, when you look at the federal order and how farmers are paid, it is in their best interest for that product to move. You can't have product, regardless of what class you're selling into, you can't have product sitting there. It impacts everybody. So it's, making sure that we are moving that product and driving consumption from consumers.
When you talk product, this means something different now than perhaps 30 or 40 years ago, right? Because the concept of is kind of analogous to the evolution of corn, right?
Yeah.
Like corn used to be, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, was very much a crop that was consumed whole, right?
Yep.
Whole or very closely to whole, right? But now it's like you find it in batteries and stuff. Like people have parsed out the value of corn into a gajillion different things. Milk is being fractioned off in a very similar manner, where you have, like, my wife uses milk protein, a whey protein every single day in green smoothies. She puts it in pancakes. She puts it in, she's really enjoyed baking, and she puts it in, I have 3 giant boys, and they're always eating. She's like, she'll make, zucchini bread or banana bread and dump a bunch of protein in there. So you have this capacity where it's like, just insert protein. And that's coming from, and again, I know you can get it plant-based, but dude, the gas you get with the plant-based protein, it's like, sorry, like, it's so bad. Like, it's always like, oh, it's chickpeas and stuff. Awesome. You're going to pay so hard for that. And it's more expensive. So anyway, so you have the milk-based protein that is no longer just the realm of like bodybuilders. It's like, no. Like the people are using this as a dietary additive, a supplement that really you see benefits from all the time. Because frankly, to be honest, the more protein that goes into things like pancakes or banana bread or whatever that my boys might eat to excess, you put protein in there. Not only are they getting a bigger hit of nutrition, but they're consuming less of the overall thing because they get satiated much more quickly. They're like, okay, great. I don't want to eat the entire loaf. I'll eat maybe just half of it. Like, they're monsters, right? But as you have these different products coming to market and being consumed, not just within our borders, but internationally, does Dairy West take a position on educating different producers about, perhaps engaging in different production mechanisms, or engaging in different, like, okay, look, this 500 herd or this, 10, they were able to produce this, or they process it differently, and now they have a different offering instead of just like, hey, here's the raw milk, right? And because you only have one level of value that you can provide, and you'll get money for that, that's fine. But you can also like 2 and 3 and 4 and 5x the value of everything with additional investment and different product offerings.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fascinating area. And I think what you're identifying, that's, it's true of every industry, right? I think you're mentioning corn. Technology has continued to advance.
Sure.
We've had to get smarter about how we're feeding people at the end of the day, right? We talked about how many people there are on the planet. That's going to continue to expand. And I think...
Do you have kids?
No kids.
Okay. Well, if you ever get kids, you'll probably see a movie called Planes. And in Planes, Dusty Crophopper is the plane. That's like, he's the protagonist. And his friend, Chug, is his fuel guy. And he's like, I came up with a new slogan for corn-based fuel. And he's like, what? Corn. It gives you gas. It's like, again, as technology changes, it's like, we're now making, corn-based fuel. Anyway, I'm sorry. I was thinking, you brought up corn again. I was like, yeah, what about gas?
We've always known, the truth that was there, milk is meant to nourish. We've understood that, that's always been the case, right? And now that we've gotten more technology involved, we've been able to fractionate dairy, other products as well. But with dairy, you've been able to start to isolate and understand the different aspects and components that make it up. Our producers have become, more and more productive. They've driven production up per animal over time, but obviously, they breed for components as well. So you've seen, fat components and then protein components go up, and both of those, have a ton of uses, right? And you're able to split them out, and you've got dairy and products you would never imagine it was in, right? And the, your point about plant protein and dairy protein, I mean, they're fundamentally different. And Dairy West, over the years, to the farmers' credit, they've really invested in research. And, we've got our build program that not only churns out, good nutrition research and product science research. I'm going to give Eric Bastian from our team a shout out.
Shout out, Eric.
He's, he forgets more in a day than I'll ever know. And he's a product scientist, and, to hear him geek out about dairy proteins and all the different things that we can do with it and go into, there's a lot to be excited about in the dairy industry.
He's not in Idaho, is he?
Yes. Yeah. Based in Twin.
Oh, dude. Get Eric Bastian on the phone after this. I will go to Twin.
Oh, yeah. Have you not met him?
I have not.
He's
I would
brilliant.
love to go talk to him. He probably has like a baller R&D lab, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he works.
We'll do a podcast from the lab, in the lab.
So he works with all the universities. So we've got all of our land grants, and basically we co-fund projects, and we work directly with processors, and they identify, hey, I need a product solution here. We say, we're going to work with you on that. We'll bring funding, you bring funding, and then we bring in a student from the university. So not only are we putting out either product science or nutrition research to help, really prove out the value of dairy and then drive commercialization, but we're also training future workforce, right? So you're creating a student who's educated in dairy product science that can then go work at a processor, right? They end up at, Glanbia, they end up at IMP, whatever it might be.
Sure.
So they take that innovation mindset and then continue to innovate. So it's something that, it's been a bread and butter,
No, great. Listen.
Pardon the pun, bread and butter program for us for years. And it's, something that we'll continue to invest in. And I think, we really try to think outside the box with what we do at Dairy West. And it is about driving value. And there's always, high visibility stuff, and it's important to reach consumers, but the media cycle is so fractured at this point. The idea of a got milk campaign where we get it out there and everybody sees it, and it's so iconic. And at the end of the day, does it drive sales? It drives awareness, but does it drive sales? I mean, it's a different media cycle now. So to go out and try to do that, good luck. You don't see major brands with just insane marketing budgets really be able to break through consistently with one campaign. It's just not really a thing in the media cycle anymore.
I had one of my former clients was a guy who made the Budweiser frogs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And somebody was talking to me about the Budweiser frogs. It was like a year or two ago. I was like, you realize if they came out now, it would never work.
It was a moment in time that's gone.
And the mechanism of media consumption at the time, like that commercial came out during the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you had a captured audience. They were not flipping the channel. So like just within a TV media consumption, that was a unique time frame. And it also took time to develop. That was the thing. Like that commercial, you didn't get it until it was like 25 seconds in. Try getting somebody to stay for 2 seconds on a reel that they're scrolling back. Like you can't. So we have, to your point, we've completely changed our media consumption habits. And because of that, like we have to really change how we try to engage people. Like you got to meet people where they are. You got to, like, very much like dairy products, give people what they want, meet them where they are, bring value to them. But it's a completely different way of communicating because people don't like the commercial model anymore. Like they don't like consuming content that's overly produced or like designed to persuade them.
You don't have a captive audience, right? I mean, you're sitting there, you're watching a football game and you're sitting there for, 2.5 minutes. It's football, so you watch 2.5 minutes of commercials and then 1 minute of football and then 2.5, and that's gone, right? I mean, kind of went out the window with people being able to record and skip over the commercials, and now you're just competing for time. And if you're on a phone, I mean, people are, like you said, I mean, the attention span. What is it? People say it's 7 seconds at this point on a piece of content, which is less than a goldfish's attention span.
Oh my God. So and you really have, like, if you can get somebody to the 7-second mark, they're going to watch the whole clip, but it's getting them past the first second and a half, 2 seconds. Yeah. Because you'll make a decision if you're going to watch within like a second. And you
got to grab people.
Boom. Yeah, you got to. And because you're holding with like your thumbs just going, like the arthritis people are going to have in this generation.
It's not going to be an iconic. It'll be a moment in time. Like it's not going to be an iconic, like, oh, the Budweiser Frogs campaign where everybody quotes it. Like those days those days are gone.
Right.
And so we've really tried to take our programs and think about how we can drive value back to producers. So of course we still invest into, direct to consumer marketing.
Sure.
But it's not the most efficient channel for us. We have to go kind of with and through partners, right? So a lot more of our time and effort goes into product science, nutrition science, commercialization, working directly with processors on, bringing new products to life or helping them, move through specific sales channels, which it's trackable. It moves results, but it's not as visible. And so sometimes I think farmers wonder, where did checkoff
Where's the
go?
value?
Where did checkoff go?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it lately. And it's less of a, it's not as fun of a story. It's not as sexy as it is to be like, all right, everybody knows got milk, but at the end of the day, it is where it needs to be to actually be effective with where the marketplace is now. It's not as visible, but it's also more trackable. I mean, we get way closer to being able to show what we've done from a movement of sales and driving consumption standpoint than we did 20 years ago. So
that's amazing. The problem of justifying, like having a value proposition that is actually more valuable than the more visible but less effective value proposition, like what a pickle you'd be in. And they're like, okay, listen to me. Like, this actually is working. I know you don't see
just
any of it.
Just give me an hour to tell you about it.
But
right?
like, that's what it takes, where it's like, this is really complex. Cross industry, there's a big problem within power right now in Idaho. Cause like everybody has data centers that are popping up. And again, it's a very similar problem. It's like, guys, look, we're actually, I know you think that all of these bad things are happening and it's going to take about 45 minutes, but let me explain to you why you're far better off. Again, it's a communication play, and especially when you struggle to get a second and a half, getting an hour of time to explain or give data is just that's a big hill to climb.
Well, when you talk about how difficult it is to communicate with consumers because they have so many inundated with media and content constantly. I mean, farmers are no different. And then add to the fact they work 100 hours a day, and they're on not always in a place where they've got service or can have a phone out and whatever else it might be.
Sure.
It's about, sitting down and having those conversations. So I think nothing replaces face-to-face and engaging, with our stakeholders. But it's the same thing. I mean, you're competing for people's time, whether it's, in any form of communication, right? I mean, this is probably what you do every day, right? It's
all day. Yeah.
How do we make what we're doing, matter and capture people's attention with it at the end of the day.
Right. And ultimately it has to, it always has to come back to, it has to come back to value. Exactly what you're talking about with products, because there are a lot of people that want to engage on the, dude, well, I'll tell you off air, but somebody got a hold of me the other day. I'm like, that's not something I'm ever. And it wasn't even like a nefarious thing. It was just like, I have no desire to ever talk about that subject, because again, if it's my barometer for value is like, do I find it interesting? And if I find it interesting, then I just go with it. It's like, cause I dive in kind of like a truffle hound. I'm like, there's interesting stuff here. I just need to find it, or it's interesting right out of the blocks. But it's that value proposition, which is like, this is going to be of interest. Just give me a second and you'll get there. But again, starting with the value first and then working the system back. Yeah. As a larger association now, I sat down with the executive director of the Idaho Wheat Council recently, and they had just finished their deal, an international deal, I believe, with Taiwan for a whole lot of wheat. And this is not an unusual thing. They just re-upped it and slightly large contract than before. Now that you're a larger block of production, do you have the capacity to negotiate more favorable deals internationally or nationally because you represent more producers?
So, yes, and I'm going to try to give you, this is my point earlier. Give me an hour. No, I'll try to make this interesting.
You're the one doing things today. I just sit here with
yeah. At some point, I know I have to introduce. So I'm going to give Krista Harden a shout out. She's in town for our annual convention that we've got going on right now. So part of Dairy Checkoff, I think you think it's one entity, and you go into the myriad of different things that it funds and does on behalf of producers. And you I think people's eyes start to glaze over a little bit, but they were intentional and they serve an absolute, critical function for the industry. So exports is, it's important for the entire dairy industry in the U.S. You're about 17% of the milk ends up overseas right now. Much larger in our region, especially in Idaho and Washington. I mean, it's a big export region. We've got people who, both cheese powders, and now you're going to start seeing butter start to go overseas because, there's a bit of a glut, a butterfat that we've got an opportunity to find demand for. It's critical for us to be successful in exports as a region, and if not, you end up with needing to be able to build up that demand in the domestic market, and there's not enough there. We need to be able to leverage that to make sure that there's a market for the products that our farmers are producing. So as a larger entity, what I would mention, so Krista Harden's in town. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here.
No, it's fine. And she is the for IDEX. She's a CEO for Idaho. International Dairy Exporter.
Yeah, so she's the CEO for USDEC, which is the U.S. Dairy Export Council, and that is predominantly funded by farmers through Checkoff, and they've got offices all around the world. I was over with them and a handful of producers and processors from our region. What has it been? Just a couple of weeks ago in Singapore, which is kind of a hub for Southeast Asia, engaging with, both the government side of things. Obviously it's about, tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and making sure that, our product can get into those markets, and compete with some of the other, global exporters for dairy. But it's also about engaging with buyers over there. So for our region, yes, I think if you go to, wherever it might be, let's use the Philippines as an example. If I go over there and I say, hey, I've got product, you want to nourish your, 300 million people that you've got living here, and I've got, a product that we can get over there. It's affordable. It delivers protein, calcium, all these nutrients that your population needs to be healthy. And I'm from Idaho, What does that mean to them, right? I think if you have a broader area, you can create a little bit more story and provenance on where it's coming from. We've got great access to ports, and ultimately we can go in and say, we've got diversity of processors and products from within our region. We can meet your demand. We can provide, some redundancy and backups as supply, shifts over time. So yes, I think it allows us to put a bigger emphasis on building in existing export markets where we already have success, but there's a ton of opportunity for growth. And really for our region, I mean, you've got other regions within the country that have really emphasized exports. I think California is one, right, where you go overseas and you hear about it all the time. This gives us an opportunity to kind of work directly with USDEC to make sure that the Northwest is recognized as an export powerhouse. And I think the U.S. has a reputation historically for really just using the export market to balance to balance their overall supply, where it's all right. We've got domestic consumption here. We've got production here, so we'll be there until we don't need to be there. And that has changed in the last 20 years. And I think especially for a region like ours where it is export dependent, I mean, with where we're at, it's a lot easier for us to send product over water than it is to send over and compete with other farmers and, the East Coast or wherever else it might be. So yeah, absolutely critical for us. It's something that, Checkoff funding goes to fund USDEC, and they do market access and regulatory. They do marketing overseas. They've got people stationed in, all of our key export markets, be it, LATAM, be it Southeast Asia, be it North Asia or Middle East, North Africa. Those are all big dairy consumption regions with massive opportunity for growth. Some of that's being filled by the EU, some of it's being filled by Oceania, and we can continue to grow in that space, and that's beneficial for all the farmers, and especially for our farmers in these big exporting regions like the Northwest.
Thank you for that. There have been large developments within dairy products and essentially dairy production in the last 2 decades. What's coming around the corner? Like, what's the next thing where it's kind of like, guys, everybody get ready, because this thing, we're going to do this. It's like, well, I'm not even going to posit an idea.
No, I think some of them are out there right now. I think the work that is going on in dairy proteins, and I'm absolutely going to take you up on getting you in the studio with Eric, because I think you would love that conversation. He's awesome, and he'd be a great conversation.
You know what I want to know? I want to ask him. This is what I really want to ask him. As we move into a more arid West, which we absolutely know we are, there are opportunities for small modular water refining and waste, like biological byproduct treatment, right? On the on a lower scale, but we have water that comes out. We have fertilizers that come out for the amount that we can't process. We have methane capture and energy production. So it's almost like, is there a world where we start putting around, where we start transporting modular, like shipping container water refining systems that literally can be plug and play, where it's like, this is your input pipe and these are your output streams for water recapture and for fertilizer production and for perhaps even power generation, even if it's localized. It's like,
Yeah.
if we could start doing that instead of having like a $50 to $100 million investment, but literally have like, give me $5 million, I can get you 2 shipping containers. They're going to be on slides. So just literally put them in line. That would be so lit. That would be so wild.
No, and honestly, there's technology out there right now. So there's, basically, I didn't fully answer your last question. I'll go to this one and then come back
I'm
to
sorry.
it. But
I'm going to scroll.
no, you're good. You're good. But no, so as far as like the waste streams coming off of dairy, so if you're talking about, from my perspective, manure is not just waste. It's a huge opportunity. It's fertilizer. You can recycle the water.
Yeah.
You can capture gas from it. All of those things have value, and that can become a value stream for for dairies, and a lot of them have already been able to do that. The issue is, and I think what you're identifying is, there's a lot of technology we can take and employ. It requires investment, and it's it's not an industry where people are flush with capital to be able to do those things. So it either requires long-term contracts, it requires subsidies. Farmers don't want to take on debt. That's a huge risk for them, right? So there's there is a ton of opportunity to be able to do that. Technology is out there and it's developing. We need to find a way to be able to fund those things. But, some of the systems I've seen people put in on their farms, incredible. And there's so much good opportunity in that space to create more efficiencies, to, minimize waste, and also just make them more effective overall. There's really good stuff out there. And I hope we can find ways to get good investment. Certainly you don't want to rely on subsidies, but we've got to get customers, as they put more demands on producers, to help pay for it. And customers, I mean people who are not. Consumers need to do their part as well, but I'm talking about some of these big food brands, right? When they've set these goals for reductions. And for me, it's more about creating efficiencies on the dairy. That's really what you want to do at the end of the day. Right. You've already got this amazing creature that's taking something that we can't eat and turning it into something that is, it's the most nutritious product on the planet, right? That's miraculous, right? But there's opportunities to continue to drive more efficiencies on farms. And I've almost seen, and I probably shouldn't name the company because I don't want to give free advertising, but your shipping container idea, where it's a water recycling plant and they drop it off on a farm. I've seen one of those. They exist, and it's incredible.
It does?
Yes.
That's wild.
We can talk about it off air. But it's the kind of thing where they put it in, they got the investment, and then to run it over time, they actually haven't been able to run it consistently, just because the cost of continuing to run it versus the renewable energy that you're generating, it didn't break even for them. So it's a numbers game at the end of it. And I think, producers want to do the right thing, and they will, but it starts with economic sustainability at the end of the day. And then beyond that, of course, they're going to take care of the land. They have to, right? That's their livelihood. Same reason they take care of the cows. But no, so
you know what they should do? I don't even know if this is how it works, but all of the benefits from the treatment, and then figure out some way to get like carbon credits for getting rid of that waste, and then sell the carbon credits. So it's like the process loses money, but then you can sell the carbon credits to somebody else, and like that's where you make your money.
Oh yeah, and they're built into it, and I think that's
already there. Okay.
Well, and that's part of the risk, where if you've got a CapEx investment for a new piece of tech like that, oftentimes the equity that you're playing with is those carbon credits, right? Gotcha. So the farmer builds that into being able to actually put whatever it might be on the farm.
Sure.
And then you don't have it for the operating expenses after the fact. So the systems, it needs to be rethought right now. I think people jumped because there was so much, you've got all these states introducing LCFSs, and then they kind of tipped over on themselves. And obviously the temperature at a federal level's changed a little bit. So some of the some of the government funding around that is not as available as it was. But it is a massive opportunity, and the dairy industry is in a position where they absolutely can generate power. They've put aggressive goals out there, and some of that starts with the customers around greenhouse gas neutrality by 2050, and it's doable, right? Because the product we're producing, if you're looking at the nutrients that it's providing, like compared to other sources, it's doable. It's just, it takes investment and it takes time, and that can't be on the back of producers. But you did, so you asked me a question about what the next product is.
Yes.
I went on a rant about
We're good.
how
Keep
awesome
going.
Eric is, and I think that is a tee up for another episode.
Yes.
But, you know, for me, I think we were talking about fractionation earlier, and we're understanding more about the micronutrients in dairy than we ever have, right? We're able to pull AI in and look at all these different research papers that have been done and start to understand, oh, there's this in dairy. We knew it was there, but we didn't actually know what it did. But there's this study over here, and you're parsing through just so much research so quickly to be able to tell you, you know, all right, this has this functional benefit, and we can actually isolate it. So you're able to, you know, essentially filter things out, separate things out. Sure. And then, you know, there's encapsulation projects that are going on where you're taking specific, you know, proteins or aspects of dairy that you can add as a supplement into other products. And it's not even just, you know, just directly for consumption. I mean, there's dairy and, you know, beauty. I've seen people make T-shirts out of milk at the end of the day. So there's all sorts of stuff that you can do with it. But from my perspective, I think a lot of it, you know, centers around those micronutrients. So you've seen a lot of stuff come out about lactoferrin, and it's, you know, you kind of have that, you know, this you know, what do you want to call it? Sort of this, you know, understanding, or, you know, this. I'm trying to come up with the right term for it, but it's the, you know, everybody knows that, you know, a glass of milk is good for you, and we're now able to understand why and what is in it, and how we can take those things and put them into other products. So I think it's going down to that micronutrient level. There's things like lactoferrin. There's so many other things that you're pulling out of dairy, and then you can either fortify dairy with it as you're kind of pulling those components out and we're driving them up, or you can put it in other products. So I think it's about taking those, you know, what makes dairy so good, and being able to use it in a million different ways is sort of the next big thing in my mind.
Continue parsing it out.
100%.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I obviously, you know, there was, I deeply feel like science somehow got over its skis in like the 50s, right? And that's where you see a creation of a lot of alternate fats. And then all of a sudden these fad diets start coming along where it's like, we got to go low fat, or different kinds of fat instead of saturated fat. And then it's like, we're going to go high carbs, and we're going to go, oh, it's sugar. No, it's not. Just like all these different things. And so it is very encouraging that people are coming back to something that has been a part of the human diet forever.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is good, fine, it's good. Okay, we can kind of break it up to like a lot of good things. And now instead of focusing on creating an alternative to this thing that we already knew was a positive aspect of diet, it's like now we can apply science to figure out like, okay, let's rip out these different pieces and allow people to make different Lego blocks, or use them in different creations, whatever they may be, that they can add in these, again, like the wife with banana bread, making it chock full of protein. It's like, you eat less of it, you enjoy it, it's good for you, like all of those different things. And it wouldn't be possible unless you parsed out that one piece.
Yeah. So. It's that, you know, we know it's good for us.
Yeah.
We don't exactly know why, but we know it is. And now we're to the point where we can identify why, and then we can take that and, you know, magnify it through, I mean, you know, basically product science at the end of the day. And, you know, and it can be, you know, I was, you know, when I was I was in Southeast Asia recently. I mentioned, you know, we were kind of looking at their grocery store, and they were talking about some of their nutrition challenges out there, and really high sodium within their diet. So there's been a big effort to actually remove sodium and then supplement it with lactose for flavor, right? And the output's great, and then you don't have that much sodium in the diet. So there's so many uses like that you just don't think about. And I don't think a farmer, you know, they have no idea that their product is ending up in this powder, and then it's, you know, on the shelf in Indonesia. And it's like, how did that happen? And that's, I mean, the global food system is more connected than it ever has been. And certainly, I mean, yeah, you're aware your product is exported, but to your point, it's no longer just, you know, a gallon of milk on the shelf. Right. And we're actually seeing, I mean, there is sort of that movement within the U.S. where it is a return to whole foods. There is, you know, there's always going to be that swing, like you were saying, where people, it's like, this is good, this is bad next year. There's been and honestly, I think, you know, I think it's a good direction for us to be headed. You know, that return to natural foods, trying to limit the amount of processed things we're taking in. I mean, that's what dairy is, right? I mean, it's a natural food. It's naturally nutritious, and having that return, it's been a boon for dairy. I mean, we've seen good sales in retail, and people are really coming back to the category. And some of the alternatives that have been out there, people realize they're not, you know, nutritionally equivalent, right? or taste equivalent, right? So
The
I think,
whole experience is inferior because I've tried a bunch.
yeah. And I mean, there's that novelty when they come on the market, but you've seen those plateau. I mean, and I'm more speaking fluid milk, alternatives versus, the other ones, some, cashew cheese we were talking about earlier. That's truly a niche product that never really got like a significant foothold. But some of those other ones, I think they were highly visible, but you had outside investment, you had, private investment basically coming in and supplementing those with marketing dollars. They were novel. You had sort of soy come on the market. You had almond come on the market. You had oat come on the market. And there's some fringe ones like pea. And, we talked about maybe why that one didn't catch on.
My dad went to UC Davis, and when I was 10 or 11, they realized like, oh, you're allergic to milk. Like I had a lactose problem when I was a little kid. My brothers and sisters didn't have it, but I did.
Yeah.
And dude, I should have taken out stock in lactase pills. Like I pop them like 3 times a day. It's so great. But the point is, my dad goes to like Earth Day at Davis, and he's like, "Oh, there's this milk alternative." And so I was like hanging out with him, and he's like, "Here, try this." And I'm like, "Tastes like crap." Of course, I'm like, "Oh yeah, great." So he buys this whole thing, and it's like potato milk, and it's this milky looking water, and it tasted like dirt. And I was like, this is so bad. And he was like, this is great. Like now you can put this in cereal. I'm like, I will do orange juice in my cereal all day long over this. Like how about this? I won't eat cereal. Like that's fine. Yeah. Like the incredible edible egg. Like I'll just go for that bad boy.
Do that instead.
Yeah. Right. And when people talk about milk alternatives, it's like, I remember that was my first experience. And then you have like the almond milk, which is like, what even is this? It's just a different colored water. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. And then of course people have like the oat milk. It's like, oh man, like whatever.
Well, and the amount of stabilizers and everything else. Yeah. And I think consumers, for all the reasons we're identifying, it's the taste, it's the nutrition,
it's the whole
experience. The value of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the novelty has worn off, and you've seen some of those markets, kind of hit a peak and then start to plateau and come back down. And that speaks to the true value of dairy, right? I think when push comes to shove and you start to see inflation, what are people going to do? They're going to go to the things that they know deliver value, and that's real dairy.
I know you have to get going because I know you're at the convention today. I really appreciate your time. I don't want to overstep
this. Is way more fun than being up on stage. So happy to take the distraction.
I tell you, people are like, "What do you do all day?" I'm like, "You have no idea." Like it is. I get to have like ridiculous, crazy, informative all day long, and it's like like I just black out, and then all of a sudden it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, I gotta go home. Anyway, I had the one product that I'm so happy has fallen out of favor is the beef substitutes, like the Impossible Burger. They're like, it bleeds. I was like, it's bleeding beet juice. Like, what do you? And it's like, I'm not even against beets. Just don't sell it to me as a hamburger.
Yeah.
And why do you think it's so much better than this? And it's like, those fads came in so fast, man. Like the alternative. And I know there's actually a crossover now between like beef on dairy, just like, adding another value stream to dairies.
It's been huge. I mean, for a lot of dairies, that's been the difference between staying in and selling out. So it's huge.
I'm just so happy that those things are going away.
Yeah, it's the same story though, right? I think you've got novelty there, and there's some good marketing behind it, and it shows up, and then people flip it over and look at the ingredients list, and it's 2 pages long, and it's a bunch of words you've never heard of, and it's like,
right.
What is that?
I feel like that's another case of like science getting ahead of you. You developed a hammer. You're trying to find a nail. You're like, we made this thing that can kind of pass for, like, if you squint enough, you're like, is that a burger or a dead slug? I don't know. But like, if you squint enough and then put some cashew cheese on it, it'll taste like trash and somebody will buy it. It's like, done. Let's order that.
Take them down. Shots fired. I like it.
I feel like you and I have just done the cashew cheese substitute industry like a disservice.
Yeah.
Next time you come in, we'll have crackers.
Nothing against cashew farmers. I like a cashew. It's not a replacement. I'm sorry,
bro. We don't have to have allegiance. Isn't that like predominantly a South American product from a cashew apple?
Probably.
Like, do you know cashews grow on apples?
Oh, I know it's on top of a fruit. It's bizarre.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so take a normal apple. You know the little flower
off the top or the bottom?
Yeah. So it's like the little flower part on a normal apple that you hold on to. There's a little thing down there, and that's the cashew nut. And so they crack the thing open. You and I have never had cashew apples because they don't store well and they don't ship them. So
they're edible though. You
can eat a cashew apple, but it's like the nut comes off of the apple, right? So, but that's like in Brazil. I don't care about Brazilians. Like that's like they can do whatever they want. Like they got beaches, they got like the big statue, like whatever. That's fine. you don't get my market share of cheese.
That's fair. That is very fair. I couldn't agree more.
God bless you, sir. Listen, thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking the time out of the convention. I would love to start connecting more with research scientists and other people in the industry, because they're all, even within the energy sector, like there are inventions and different ways of bringing value outside of dairies that we need that value. Because guess what? We don't have additional pipelines of gas coming into Idaho, and the shares that the gas rights that existed, Idaho Power went and bought up the remaining gas rights, because 40% of Idaho Power's production comes out of gas generation. So the fact that we have methane capture coming out of, like, for instance, landfills, we have methane capture and digesters coming out of dairies. It's like we are now inventing more of something that we thought we were out of, and we're inventing it locally. And these are incredible innovations that are coming out of an already very necessary industry.
Another way that dairy can be a solution. I mean, it delivers more than its share of value right now, but there's, like we said, more opportunity. No, Matt, this has been a pleasure, and I will absolutely get you connected with more of our team. We've got some great minds on there, and I think you'd love to connect with them. So
absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. We'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.